and welcome to this Sunday evening talk at the Oxford Real Farming Conference Global Edition. The title of this talk is "We Can't Eat Gold," and we're going to be hearing from some speakers from around the world who have experience resisting unwanted mining projects that are encroaching on lands and waters which have much more beneficial uses for the communities that call them home. Before I give an introduction to the issue and to our speakers, introduce myself. My name is Hannibal. I work for an organisation in the UK called the Gaia Foundation, and I also help coordinate a global network called Yes Life for Mining, which is a network of for communities and organisations and other networks who are resisting mining, but also standing up for the positive things that they're already doing or the alternatives they want to realise. We're going to have 3 speakers today, and each one's going to talk for about 15 minutes, which hopefully, if we get our timings right, should leave us with about 10 minutes at the end to take some of your questions, which Hope, our volunteer, is kindly going to gather for us. For those of you who are not too familiar with the issue of mining or are here because you're curious, or maybe you're even, God forbid, facing a mining project yourselves, we're going to be exploring how the global mining industry is impacting on the lands and waters we rely on for our food today, as well as hearing from the communities that tend to them and how they're resisting mining in a practical sense. And some things to bear in mind about mining before we go into this conversation is that when we talk about mining, we're talking about a spatial and temporal impact that far exceeds what most of us think about. We're not talking about small underground mines or families mining seams. We're talking about large industrial scale corporations that are extracting over kilometers with impacts that spread over a much larger region through the air, through water, through soil and the land. And the impacts of mining happen at every stage of the mine cycle, from the exploration stage through the preparatory stages into the extraction phase, and then often for centuries after the active mining operations have actually stopped. Another thing to bear in mind is that we're in a period of our history where the number of minerals and metals which we rely on is increasing in terms of the number of minerals and metals, in terms of mineral species you might see on the periodic table, but also in terms of the amount of them we need, the amount of each mineral and metal. And we're at a very important moment now where we're making decisions about the future and how we address issues like climate change and industrial transitions that are happening. And many of those so-called solutions require large amounts of minerals and metals. So these transitions to renewable energy, to new kind of industrial technologies and robotics, artificial intelligence and new military technologies may seem cleaner and greener, but they all generally entail a huge weight of minerals and metals that need to be extracted if we want to go down that path. I say if, because it is a big question and it should be something we're discussing. And each one of those mines entails the destruction of living systems and also living communities. So without too much further ado, we're going to be asking in this session what it takes to resist a mine when it comes into your community land and threatens your ability to produce food or fish or gather wild foods for yourself and your community. And we're going to examine the sort of colliding worlds of corporate internationalist mining and localized, deeply rooted farming and fishing communities. And we're going to hear from 3 speakers from around the world who can give you not only a broad sense of what mining looks like in different geographies, but also at different points during the mining cycle. Our first speaker is going to be Fidelma O'Kane, who works for an organisation called Save Our Sperrins, which is in Northern Ireland in the Sperrins area of outstanding natural beauty. And she and her community are fighting an organisation called Dalradian Gold, which is looking to operate in an area where there are upland farms, raised bogs, a lot of archaeological sites of great importance. And she's going to tell us about the preventative resistance to a mine that hasn't yet taken off in earnest. Then we're going to hear from Mariana Gomez from the Comité Ambiental en Defensa de la Vida, and also Amazon, who is from Colima in Colombia. the struggle Anglo Gold Ashanti, which is a real success story, a real emblematic case for all of us who are working on mining issues. And she's going to tell us about the key role that farmers and the youth played in stopping that mine, why they wanted to stop it, and what the true gold in their territory really is. And then finally, we'll hear from Tero Mustonen, who works for the Snow Change Cooperative. He's based in Finland, in eastern Finland, in a small village called Selkie, which is characterized by lakes, marsh, mires, and forests, northern forests, fishing, hunting, and gathering. And they've had success in shutting down an active mine, a peat mine in this case, which is a potent fossil fuel, and also launching a community-led rewilding project to restore those ecosystems, and especially those water systems, back to health, which is really a self-starting process, which a lot of us can learn from, because as much as we need to stop new projects from going ahead, we also need to heal the damage that's been done. So, not much further ado, Fidelma to kick off, and then we'll move through to Mariana and then Tero. Thank you.
Hello, thanks very much for inviting me to speak. I'm just getting the PowerPoint up. And okay, I'm involved in a group called Save Our Sperns, voluntary campaigner. So we're trying to protect our water, our air, our land, and our health from the toxic pollution of gold mining. And just my first slide shows, it's a photo of our area, and it's just only a snapshot, shows the mountains in the background and the lovely fields and valleys in the foreground. And this area is designated an area of outstanding natural beauty because of its landscape, its heritage, and its wildlife. And that's about 50 years ago it was designated. So some background, a Canadian exploration company called Dalradian Gold arrived here in Northern Ireland about 10 years ago, and they worked away under the radar, and it was several years before we even knew they were here. So they initially got prospecting licenses to explore for metals in counties Tyrone and County Derry, and they got option lease agreements to explore for gold and silver. And they got that from the Crown Estate because the Queen of England has the rights to precious metals in Northern Ireland. And again, the same area as they're exploring for metals, 122,000 hectares, so a very extensive part of the country. And over the years, Dalradian have set about trying to buy the social license, and that's the term they use in mining circles. And it's basically to win favour and get acceptance with the local community. They have a fund called Dalradian Community Fund, and they give out sponsorship and grants to organisations, to charities, to sporting bodies, to football clubs, to schools, etc., and in the hope that people will support them in return. They haven't been very successful in that, but they're still persevering with it. That's just a map of Northern Ireland, and well, Ulster probably a bit better explanation, and it shows the areas where their mining licenses have been granted. In November 2017, Dalradian applied for a planning permission for a gold mine and a cyanide processing plant. And that top left picture shows they had a 10,000 page planning application. It was the biggest in Ireland, north or south at the time. And then in last year, 2019, sorry, I know we're now in 21, in the autumn of 2019, they submitted what they called the first addendum, and that's the middle picture there. And you can see it was just as big as the first planning application. So that was additional information and some changes and replies to questions they were asked from government departments. And then just before Christmas, very recently, they submitted what they called the second addendum. And you can see from the picture at the bottom that the second addendum is as big as the first planning application and the first addendum put together. So we are now slowly reading our way through the second addendum and starting to write objections to it. Now, the site that Dalradian has selected for their proposed mine is on a hill overlooking the village of Greencastle. This is a very rural area. Their site is 1,200 metres from a primary school and a playgroup, and much closer than that to a church, a community centre, a football club and playing fields. And as I said already, it's in the heart of the Sperns area of outstanding natural beauty. Our two rivers, the Owen and the Owen rivers, are both designated special areas of conservation because of the presence of freshwater pearl mussels, otters, salmon, etc. And these two rivers are headwaters of the River Foyle, which flows down to Derry City. And the Foyle River system is an area of special scientific interest because of the abundance of salmon. Near Dalridian's site, bordering it, is Drumlea and Mullen Woods, which are both areas of special scientific interest because of the sessile oak trees. Nearby is a Ramsar site called the Black Bog, and it is the largest area of raised bog in Europe with special flora and fauna. And then transecting the site, Dalridian's proposed site, is the Green Road, which is a public right-of-way, and it has great historic significance for us local people because it was used by Hugh O'Neill in 1607 when he was fleeing from County Tyrone to go to Donegal at the time of the flight of the Earls to Europe. Our area also contains numerous archaeological sites, well over 100, between standing stones, Ogham stones, court graves, cairns, etc., etc. And the northwest of Ireland is high in radon gas. Geological Survey Northern Ireland has a map of this, and it shows really that we are very high in a high area of radon gas, and people in the area have to put a special barrier in the foundations of their house when they're building a house. So you can see it's a very special site that they've selected. Now, why do we oppose gold mining? Well, overall, gold mining is a dirty, toxic industry. And I would say to you, you don't have to take my word for it. You can check it out yourselves on the internet. It produces a lot of pollution, particularly from the heavy metals that are a result of gold mining. Heavy metals like arsenic, mercury, lead, cadmium, chromium, and I'll mention chromium-6 for those who are familiar with Aaron Brockovich. So there's a lot of poisonous metals. In fact, Dalridian have mentioned 24 heavy metals and acids that they wish to discharge into the local rivers. So there'll be tailings from the 4 tailings ponds, mercury slag, radioactive contaminants. Whenever they drill 900 meters into the earth, they will release the radioactive gas. And then diesel, Dalridian intend, they say they will use 3.3 million litres of diesel per year for 20 years, at a time when the British government is talking about doing away with diesel cars. We will be poisoned with diesel. So all this pollution will leach and leak and blow into the water. It will go into the water table. It will leak into the rivers, the streams, and it will really cause water pollution. It will also blow about in the air. Dalridian are talking about putting the waste rock in a huge dry stack facility that will be 54 metres high, 17 stories. We have strong winds in the area because we're in an elevated area, and that will blow about. There will be noise pollution from the machinery and from the explosions, which they claim will be twice a day, every day of the year for 20 years. There will be light pollution because they say the site will be lit up like an airport. Our small industries in the area, farming, fishing and tourism, will all be damaged. The clean green image of our country is at risk. Taxpayers' money is being used. The company have got grants. For example, they got £326,000 from Arlene Foster in 2014 when she was Minister for Enterprise, Trade and Investment. The police is being used as a security force for the company. They're at their beck and call. Now, having said that, the police build the company for £500,000 in 2016, and the company refused to pay. And there's legal action going on at the moment. Our government departments are being used, their time is being used to read all these submissions from the company. And big mining companies really start by mining the community, because that's what they do when they start giving out money, and greed causes division. And it has caused a lot of splits in the local community. And I think particularly after this year where we've had this pandemic, people have come to the realization your health is your wealth and money can't buy your health. I mentioned there about the dust. We were speaking to a Finnish biochemist, Jari Natunen, and he did a study in Finland around a gold mine at Kittilä, and he found the small particulate dust, especially containing arsenic and heavy metals, can blow up to 60 kilometers away from the gold mine. So we just did a 60 kilometer radius around us. We're in the middle of the circle there, the white dot, and you can see it covers nearly every county in Northern Ireland, as well as Donegal and goes into Monaghan as well. So there's going to be, people are going to be affected. And this fine particulate dust, particularly the 2.5 matter, lodges in people's lungs, and particularly children. They're very vulnerable to it, and it causes respiratory diseases and cancers. The strategies we have used against the mining company, well, we had to learn a lot about gold mining, first of all, and inform ourselves. And then we did posters and information leaflets. Then we've held public information meetings over the last 3 years. We've had about 50 public information meetings in all the little villages and towns across the Sperns. We have been networking regionally, nationally, and internationally with other campaign groups and learning and sharing with them. We have been writing letters, writing objections, preparing sample objections. We've been lobbying, not very successfully, I would say. Social media has been good for us. Save Our Sperns has a Facebook page, and we have over 7,000 followers. The local media here hasn't been good. There are 2 small newspapers, and the gold mining company puts an advertisement every week in them. For the last 2.5 years, they've been doing that. So whoever pays the piper calls the tune, and so the local newspapers don't want to hear from us. We've participated in pickets and protests, and I'll show you some photos of that. We've taken a few bits of direct action against the company. And then in May 2019, we stood an independent candidate on an anti-gold mining ticket in the local council election, and he was successful. And it was because we felt the traditional political parties were not supportive to us. They would tell us privately they're against the gold mining, but they have done nothing publicly. They've taken no action, and they haven't spoken out against the gold mining. And then we've had 1 successful judicial review in November 2019. So just some pictures to show you our strategies, leaflets, and there's an example of a public meeting. And out of the public meetings, 10 more anti-mining groups have been formed across the Spern area, and we all cooperate together. And here we've got Greencastle People's Office, and this is really the focal point of the campaign. It's a caravan on the actual site of Dalradian, and it has been going since the 3rd of February 2018. And then later in the year, there was a second caravan added. The top right photo shows people coming to celebrate the opening of it. And there's a blog written every night from Greencastle People's Office. And there at Halloween, we mark 1,000 days of resistance. And so it's an ongoing thing. And there's some pictures of protests and pickets. I'll need to move on quickly because I realise my time's running out. That's the pictures of some direct action. The top left is 4 of the local land defenders have gone on the roof of the Dalradian compound. You can see the police were called, but no arrests were made because they were very peaceful and no damage was done. The bottom right, I'll mention it, that was one of our protectors, chained himself to a drill rig and stopped the drilling for a day. And so that's our direct action. This was the election of the independent anti-gold mining candidate, Emmett McAleer, in May 2019, a very happy occasion for us. And that was our judicial review, which I took, and it was successful as well. And then in December, the number of objections were listed at 37,182, still open for objections because they still haven't got planning permission. And we'll ask everyone to help us contact Save Our Sperns. And to summarise, what we're protecting is the water of the overall Foyle River Basin, and that's including our own wee rivers and tributaries, the water table, the fish, the freshwater pearl mussels that are Ireland's only globally endangered species, and the salmon, the otters, the trout, all the special designations that we have in our area, from the AONB, the SAC, the ASSIs, the family farms, hill farms with sheep, some small dairy farms, the fishing, the sustainable tourism, our clean air, and our heritage and our culture. And we have a great affinity to the land here and to the place. Our families have been here for centuries, and we hope to pass it on in a pristine condition to our children. And we want to save our community from further conflict and not to be divided by greed. And ultimately, it's all about the health of our children and our grandchildren. And I think this Cree prophecy, Native American Indians, sums it all up. When all the trees have been cut down, when all the animals have been hunted, when all the waters are polluted, when all the air is unsafe to breathe, only then will you discover you cannot eat money. And my final slide is just the top photograph on the left is Mine Watch Canada had asked us to send a quick message to a global mining conference in Toronto. And we sent this photo. Ireland says no to mining. And then the bottom right photo is one of the protectors going over to Dalradian's compound with his banner, no poisonous gold mining in the Sperns, Dalradian out. And it reinforces our motto, which is a saying from John F. Kennedy: one person can make a difference and everyone should try. And we believe that people power will win this battle and we will keep our country free of this toxic industry. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fidelma. It's a really powerful testimony, and as always, you fit a lot in and presented it all beautifully and gave us a really good insight into the campaign. I'm going to pass on swiftly to Mariana to talk about all of the work that she's been doing in Colombia with farmers and farming communities there.
Thanks, Hal. Fidelma, it was a pleasure to listen to you, and it's so incredible to see like the common themes of communities facing mining around the world. I am Mariana, and I am from Colombia, and I'm going to share today with you Cajamarca's story. Cajamarca is a small town carved in the Andes Mountains in the center of Colombia. Colombia is a country that has very diverse ecosystems and is located on the equator. So we don't have seasons, as many of you do. And what depends like the climate depends regarding on the altitude and how, when you move up and down the mountain. So this is Cajamarca. Hal, can you show the next picture? This is Cajamarca. You can see Cajamarca in the middle of the Andes Mountains. How? And Cajamarca has territory between 800 meters over sea level to snow peaks at 4,200. So Cajamarca has the possibility of growing almost all the possibilities of food. You know, we have all the temperate floors, so it produces a huge diverse of food, and it's mainly of inhabited by small farmers that produce different products or different products at different levels. I don't know, Hal, if you can share the screen. I wanted to show you some pictures, but I will continue speaking. So, well, that is Cajamarca, exactly. Can you go to the picture before? So that at the end of the picture, you can see the town. And then you can see this crop, for example, here is peas. And the next picture shows how steep the territory is. And so the peasants have to be very skilled in order to grow this land. Next. There are no roads. So to take the food to the main roads in order to distribute it to the rest of the country, the peasants have to use the mules to carry the products to the main road. And yeah, as I said, next picture. Most of them are small farmers that grow food in it's not a monoculture territory. Most of the techniques are clean grow, like an organic growing of food. So we're very privileged because it's fairly easy to get some of the products, not corn or cotton or those like large monocultures, but fairly many products in Colombia are still organic. And also Cajamarca, next picture, has a very important relict of this palm tree that is the national tree, that is called the Palma de Cera. And it has very well conserved forests. And in 2009, Anglo Gold Ashanti arrived to the municipality interested in exploiting gold from the subsoil. And since the gold in the Cajamarca and in most parts of the Andes Mountains is not locked down like but it's disseminated. So the plan of Anglo Gold Ashanti, a huge South African mining corporation, was to make a large open pit mine like the one in the picture in Cajamarca, where the deposit of gold is located. And since the mountains are so steep, take all the gold that they would extract from Cajamarca to Piedras in a mineraloduct that would be 100 kilometers in a straight line, and process the gold there in Piedras, where I grew up, that is a little bit more flat, and build the tailings dam in Piedras. So in the map I'm showing you can see like the scope of the project. Imagine from the open pit to the tailings dam, there's 100 kilometers in a straight line. They planned to move all the rock in a huge conveyor belt from one place to the other in order to use cyanide to extract the gold and isolate it from the rest of the minerals contained in the subsoil. So, and the tailings dam in Piedras would be located on one of the most active faults in the whole country, with a huge risk of breaking. So as you see, all the project envisioned for the region would have had a huge impact in a region that produces, they call it the pantry of Colombia, because it produces a lot amount of food in which all the country depends. So the people, the inhabitants of Cajamarca, started campaigning against the project since 2009, very similar as the story that Fidelma just shared with us, lobbying to the local governments and finding ways of contacting scientists that could provide important information in order to build solid arguments. And in 2013, Piedras, the town where I grew up, where the tailings dam would be located, held the first popular consultation, that is like a referendum, that is completely legitimate in our constitution, in order to say no to mining. And 98% of the voters in Piedras said no to mining. And then in 2016, Cajamarca held the second popular consultation in the region, and 97% of the voters in Cajamarca said no to mining. So, and this picture shows the day of the voting in Cajamarca, and it's a completely legitimate civil society democratic participation instrument in our constitution. Nonetheless, it has had a lot of, like, the local communities have had to face a lot of difficulties in order to take the popular consultations to the voting polls. The government would provide less tables that the ones needed in order to provide voting stalls for the voting universe of the municipality. And the local community came up with strategies in order to achieve the voting. And so in the region, we have held 2 popular consultations in 2 municipalities, the 2 main municipalities impacted by the project, that have said no to mining in around 98 or 97% of the voters. So for me, it's a matter of of course, mining is an environmental issue, but when it comes to the rights of the people, I think it's also a matter of democracy. What is democracy? How do we participate in the decisions that will affect our future? And definitely the inhabitants of Piedras and Cajamarca know that the real value of their land is in the soil, is in the possibility of producing all this food, not in the gold. They say gold is a happiness of one day, and that food is what will really provide a livelihood for for the future generations. And so next, Hal. After Cajamarca, Hal, next picture, please. After Cajamarca held the popular consultation, there were a lot, the previous one, there were a lot of comments saying that the people from Piedras and Cajamarca were against development and were obstructing the possibility of the country of becoming rich because of gold extraction. You know, because Colombia, because it's a third world country, has this idea that it's poor and it has to open its legs to foreign investment. So we sat with the peasants and we started coming up with strategies in order to show the country that Cajamarca was not poor, and that what was the real value of the municipality and its real potential. And so Cajamarca is the world #1 producer of arracacha. That is this like Andean parsnip that you see in the picture. And we started working with the peasants and build a strategy in order to make, because an arracacha is seen in Colombia as like what the peasants eat. But it turns out that a lot of our soups and our plates, our traditional plates, use it. So we wanted to position the arracacha as a nutritious food that we as Colombians could start worshiping. So we made a strategy and we partnered with restaurants in Bogota, the capital of the country, that have a fair trade perspective. And we made a campaign around the arracacha, saying that it's the real gold of Cajamarca. So we made photographic campaigns with the parsnip painted of gold, and we partnered with restaurants, and with chefs that helped us put the arracacha in the menus of good reputation restaurants in the city capital. And we started working with peasants in order for them next to leave areas of their crop fields in forests, respecting the forest areas and the forest reserve, in order to give added value to the product and to share this story with the consumers in the city. And next. So we wanted to value the the job of the peasants in the community, and to honor all that they do in order for the food we have in the cities to reach to us through all what they have to go through in order for that food to be in our plate. Next. And yeah, it was a campaign that went national, and with help of partners in other countries, it has gone international as well. And we invited artists, very recognized artists in the country to do art pieces around the arracacha and the food production. And for example, this was the table mat in the restaurants when people went to eat it, and it's the plant of the arracacha. So people made a connection, started making a connection between what they were eating in the restaurant, what it took for that food to be on their plate, and what does it mean for the peasants back home in their communities to be able to grow this food instead of giving in their land for mining. And I always say that, just to finish, or my experience is that I feel that people who are connected to the land see themselves as part of the land, and the land as part of them. And that was paradigm shifting, because the people of Cajamarca taught all the country that, can you put the next one? The resilience of the whole depends on the participation of each one. Thank you.
Much, Mariana. Thank you very much, Mariana, and sorry for the technical issues. I think there was a bit of a lag there, so I was trying to get the slides up.
Thanks for helping.
No, thank you for the wonderful presentation and for telling us the story of Cajamarca, which has its roots in, just the amazing creativity of farmers in the campaign. We're going to pass on to Tero now, who's going to talk to us about the work that he's been doing in eastern Finland in the village of Selkie, which has spread much further. You're muted, Tero. Are you with us? There he is.
Thank you, Hannibal, and thank you to all of the organizers for having me the chance to address this very important forum. Indeed, greetings from the boreal forest and North Karelia, Finland, where it's currently -26 Celsius, and it's going to be hitting down to -30 in about a couple of days. And despite the fact that these numbers might be feeling cold to some of you, we in some ways celebrate, because these are the so-called ordinary and normal winter temperatures here in the boreal, and of course further up in the Arctic it's even colder. And currently we are fishing here under the ice. We are catching northern pike and burbot, and soon we'll start our communal seining when the ice reaches about 15 centimeters thickness. And that's how the life in the north is going on. The cycles and of course the winter time, when in the past it used to be often this kind of temperatures, and nowadays, as I said before, this is a celebration when we get to -25 and below, due to, of course, very rapidly advancing climate change. And these kind of large seasonal variations and natural ecosystems point to the boreal and the Arctic being very special for the whole planet. That's why we founded an organization called Snow Change about 20 years ago, to become a network of villages and communities and peoples to make sure that the North will have a voice and these villages will have a platform from which to take part in a range of conversations, including climate change, maintaining these cultural and traditional activities, and should the need arise, also to resist when we are called to action. There are some people, ecologists and others, who have called the northern landscapes, especially the forests, they have speculated on the concept that our boreal forests are living landscapes. Even the word conscious landscapes have been used. And that's a very profound undertaking and understanding of our home here in the North, if that's true. And if we take that as a starting point when we are reviewing and discussing the issues of mining and what has happened. What if indeed these, also what we heard before, the understanding, much like Mariana was saying, of the place and nature and all of these intact places is a profound realization that these are indeed conscious places. And what does it then entail when they are being met with mining plans, destruction, and third parties that want to utilize these areas for their commercial purposes? Now, the Arctic and Boreal is becoming, as often has been coined over the past few years, the bonanza in the North. Especially for Alaska, with the Pebble Mine, Siberia, Greenland, and then Finland and Sweden. Many of these locations here in the North are seen as the untapped wealth for the whole planet. Every new generation of iPhones, the new technologies with the 5Gs, electric vehicles, and the batteries that are needed for these so-called climate safe and future-proof vehicles will require a new mine. And very often they are the so-called rare earth metal mines, alongside with the traditional ones that have existed in the North and in the Arctic for hundreds of years. You could even argue that the mining here in the North started sometime in the 1600s, and it has never since left. So in some ways, this kind of a land use that's being stimulated by the need, the global need for technologies, climate solutions that are fueled by the rare earth metals and others, cannot be happening anywhere else except in the Boreal and in the North. And that was what was going on in 2010, when in our village of Selkie, there was a governmental company called Vapo that had been conducting a peat mining. This is a bog ecosystem or marsh mire. They had been conducting peat mining in our village when they released a very acidic 2.77 pH waters from their peat mining site. And at that time, as I am today, I was serving as the head of the village, or as the head of the village council. And then a group of us, the fishermen and the women, decided that now it's enough. And we then, following some steps, we drove this company away. And that became the landmark moment in Finnish history, which has been slated for mineral mining, the second most attractive country globally for the companies to come in. We are advertised to be a stable environment in the Nordics, and the law is very often favoring mining companies. And that's why the victory over Vapo, this peat mining company, mattered, because it realized community rights in many ways, not for the first time on all issues, but it did become a nationally relevant and highly publicized event. Some of the other mining companies that have come to our village area, because we are rich in uranium, diamonds, zinc, iron, gold, and many other metals, have required us to do a number of things on resistance. One of them has been land use mapping. So we have conducted in those areas where aggressive mining has been threatening these remaining traditional, and in the case of the Sami, further north of us in Lapland, indigenous areas, land use mapping and showing the uses of the land, the unknown histories of the land. And in fact, if we go back to this idea of living landscapes, showing that to the companies in a direct communications has sometimes proven to be a valuable asset. I have been able to drive away 3 international mining companies, 1 from Italy and 2 from Australia, and then 1 had a plan from Ireland, by phoning the CEO of these companies and informing them that, are you aware of the kind of landscape and ecosystem where you will be starting your work or you plan to conduct your operations? So in fact, by not only believing international legislation, but contacting the company head or the CEO directly and informing them that we are talking about some of the last remaining natural systems and highly important landscapes, they have then pulled out and considered or reconsidered their actions. And so far, we have been able to resist in many ways. The last thing that I want to close with is that since we drove away a decade ago that peat mining company and realized how aggressive this mining threats and pressures are on the Finnish villages and the Sami villages, we then wanted to create a new narrative, and that's what I want to talk about in a few seconds or in a minute. We then found a way to connect with the European Investment Bank and Rewilding Europe about 5 years ago to draw down an initial loan. And that became the basis of something what we call landscape rewilding program. We wanted to create a counter narrative, a completely new narrative on how villages and community-led action on rewilding and restoration of habitats, whether they are degraded by mining or forestry or other forms of industrial land use, can be looked at using traditional knowledge and science to rebuild our villages, our landscapes, and nurture them back into health. Some of our sites have gone from two bird species now, before we started, into 195 bird species visiting and living on our sites. And today, the landscape rewilding program led by Snow Change, I'm happy to report, after about 3 years of work, owns physically 25 sites across the Arctic and the Boreal. Our tally, I think, today is about 1,700 hectares, including some of the largest conservation areas in Finland, founded in 2020. And then through land concession and agreements with local landowners, we are operating on 26,000 hectares of catchment areas and restoration of lake systems, rivers, forests, marsh mires, raised bogs, and critical habitats for climate and carbon questions, and then also the migratory birds. So that's why action up here will also alleviate and support the East Atlantic Flyway. And if there are people in the audience from the UK, a lot of your birds will fly here for the summer, and they will have their younglings here. And any action we can take here, for example, on peregrine falcon or some of the rare waders, will then further assist biodiversity gains all across Europe and even Africa. So this little story that I wanted to convey to you from our frozen north at -26 today or tonight is one of a small village, 300, saying no, taking the courage to build on our understanding of what the landscapes are and what to do with them, and then expanding that into a national program. Actually now an international program. We have also links to other countries, on recreating the narrative on how a resurgence can happen, building on traditional knowledge, science, and the belief that mining is not the only alternative to these extraordinary places that are still here on the planet, which we call home here in the Boreal and the Arctic. Thank you very much for your time, and I'm very happy to take any any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tero, for your presentation and for showing us that not only when we stop mining can these places stay special and produce rich amount of food both for humans and for more than human species, but also that hope isn't all lost when mining does happen, which is a really important message given that there are thousands and thousands of mines that are either shut already or need to be shut down. And often isn't done in a good way. We've only got 7 or 8 minutes left, and I've got a couple of questions that have come through from our audience, which I'm going to ask you. You can all respond if you'd like to. The first one is that I'm told by Hope, our volunteer, that everybody is pretty much asking how they can support you. So I think maybe if you would each like to offer an opinion on how people can give you their support or where they should go to find out more information, that would be a really good next step. So maybe we can go in the order of folks. So Fidelma, then Mariana.
Sorry, Hal, I was cut off there.
That's all right. We're just
sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
We're just going to answer a question, which is how can people support you in your work and in your struggle? So if you just want to give a couple of clear ways that people can get involved or support your work, that would be great.
Okay. Well, we would appreciate if people would go into our Facebook page, Save Our Sperns, or email us at saveoursperns@outlook.com, and we can provide objection letters. All these, the planning application and the addendum, the second one, they're out for a consultation, and we are sending objections in. On top of that, the company has applied for 3 discharge consents and 2 water abstraction consents, and we're currently working away on objections. So the planning authority told us we can't do a petition, that it only counts as 1 objection. So what we do is sample objections, and we do a number of varieties and then share them with people, and they take a sentence out or a word out or change it, slightly. So we can provide plenty of objection letters to people, and that's probably the best way to keep the numbers building. There's over 37,000 at the moment, and we would appreciate just keeping it increasing. Now, the company, Dalradian, is actually owned by Orion Mine Finance Company in New York, ORION, Orion, and their headquarters is in the Cayman Islands. So that has only happened there about 2 years ago, that their shares had fallen, and there was a takeover, 90% owned now by Orion Mine Finance. So we find it harder now when it's privately owned. As before that, it was on the stock exchange as such, and we could get information, reports, but now we can't really find information. Maybe somebody else knows more about, this sort of thing than us.
Yeah, so do get in touch if you've got some expertise to share with Fidelma. Mariana.
Well, currently the situation, and I don't want to take too much time, but to learn the full story, we can share the report we did through Yes to Life, No to Mining. Our process has been member of the network since 2014 when the network was launched. And currently the situation is that the company has placed to tutelage in order to bring down the municipality agreement that that adopts the decision taken by the people in the referendum. So until December, we were asking for organizations around the world and people to send letters to the tribunal, to the local tribunal that has to take the decision regarding the tutelage. We will post the current information through Yes to Life, No to Mining. If there is still open, if the tribunal is still open to receiving letters, we will post it through Yes to Life, No to Mining, and sending letters to the tribunal would be a huge support in this moment.
Thank you, Mariana. And Tero?
Yeah, well, thank you for the thoughts on how you can support. You can go to contact@snowchange.org. Snowchange is the platform for all of these villages that's going on, and what makes our push now, I think, very significant is that we are in a crux. We are in a crossroads, also to provide another alternative. So through the landscape rewilding program, we are creating carbon sinks, we are creating jobs, we are keeping families, fishing families in the villages. Women have income, safety. People have possibility to see how tremendously fast nature can come back. And through the work that we are doing here, the international link through the climate and biodiversity gains is immense. We are not saying that we can solve all of the planet, but to quote Sir David Attenborough, he just recently said on a Guardian interview that rewilding, especially over landscapes and large parts of the north, is one of the only solutions we can do fast. So we are the port of call if you want to come to see an alternative to mining and tremendous resurgence of villages and landscapes back into health to the extent we can. And we are very willing to join alliances to support Fidelma. We have been working with Mariana for a long time, and Hannibal, of course. So we are very tremendously thankful to Gaia Foundation and Yes to Life, No to Mining for the enduring work that the Arctic and Boreal are receiving through their collaboration with us. So please come to us. There's a BBC documentary. If you click on the news section of our website, you can see what they found out when they came here, and so on and so on. And what else do we have? What is the alternative? Either we make a very good and profound choices today and will survive, or then we go down the pathway of what we saw on the 6th of January over there in DC. So indeed, thank you for the time.
Thank you so much, Tero. And I can see that there are other questions coming in, but we have run out of time. So thank you very much to all of our speakers. And I suppose I'll go last in terms of saying what else you could look at or do. Somebody has been asking about, and several people have asked about, what are the alternatives, and that's something we've written reports about, which I think Hope is going to put into the chat. But by and large, we're not just saying no to these specific mines in which communities are resisting. We're also saying that we need to really rethink the whole model of consumption, the notion of development, and also the role that economic growth plays in our societies. It's true that that electric cars are not the answer, nor is a particular technology the answer to the climate crisis. Only by addressing the social, political, and economic drivers of that crisis in growth-oriented capitalism will take us beyond. That's much more difficult, and it's not. There are no silver bullet solutions to that, but that's the reality. And we find that we're at the cutting edge of that when it comes to mining struggles. So I think Hope will have shared some links to the Yes to Life, No to Mining website where you can find out more. And I would also encourage you to look, if you're based in the UK especially, or if you know of a UK-based mining company working in your area, do check out the work of the London Mining Network as well, which does a lot of good work to hold British mining companies to account. So lastly, I'd like to thank our volunteers and our tech people and Fran and everyone at the Oxford Real Farming Conference for having us and giving us a platform today. And I hope you all have a nice, whatever time it is with you, morning, evening, whenever. Thank you.